Welcome all. We are here tonight with Gabe, who is a product designer at Danner. And Gabe, I'm just going to throw it out there to begin. So, what would you tell somebody you do at Danner?
Uh, hey Marshall. Yeah, let's we'll dive into that a little bit. So I'm the senior product designer over at Danner Boots. I handle the primarily the hike and the lifestyle categories. So work a lot with Donald and Yoji, who you've spoken with in the past. And I've been with Danner for about 6.5, 7 years now, decent amount of time. Before that, I was teaching a footwear design course at the Academy of Art down in San Francisco, doing a little bit of consulting. And prior to that, I spent almost a decade with the North Face when they were still down in the Bay Area, doing different designs for various categories over there. So I think that puts me in the place of a bit of a shoe dog, for better or worse. But it's fun. I enjoy spending a lot of time outside, can kind of geek out on product. And so this is a great way of kind of merging multiple interests. Um, and as far as what a designer does, um, I would say a designer is basically kind of a member of a product creation trifecta. So that would include a product manager, a designer, and a developer. And we kind of have a different cadence. We work together closely, but we have a different cadence. The line manager kind of starts things off
Mhm.
a little bit, and they basically they have their hand on the pulse for in terms of the market. You know, what's popular right now? What kind of opportunities might there be for our brand to put something else out there? Is there anything that we're doing now that is kind of due for a refresh, that kind of thing? And then they'll articulate it in as much detail as they can to essentially kind of describe a concept for a new boot, for a new design, a new style. And then that's kind of when they hand the baton over to me, the designer,
Mhm.
and it's kind of my job to interpret that, that description, that verbal description.
Right, you're not getting you're getting maybe pictures of other things in the market or past products and things like that, but you're not getting any sketches or like really any ideas that way. Like that's you're getting more
Not
just brief.
initially.
Yeah, okay.
We're Yeah, not initially, but it's true. Like we're looking at images. We're trying to articulate in as much detail as we can without anything existing yet,
Yeah.
what it is we're after, what it is we
Yeah.
want. And then um, once that's kind of been the report's been put together, the brief we call it, that's when it comes over into design. And as a designer, I'm trying to absorb every little good nugget of information I can
Yeah.
in that document. And essentially, I'm trying to kind of lean into the user and the environment. Danner being a brand related in the outdoor industry, that's really important. Who's going to be wearing it? What kind of conditions are they going to be wearing these boots in? How often are they going to need it? Is it gonna be a under the ankle boot that's going to be worn in the southeast, or is it going to be a mid-height, waterproof, insulated boot for the mountains? And just kind of like lean into to everything we can about what this shoe needs to do. And
I'm picturing then just this moment where you kind of absorb all this, you've read everything, and then you're kind of go into a dark room and meditate on it for a minute, right? And find your muse.
it's yeah, totally. It's like the Matrix or something. You just kind of
Yeah.
get plugged in with all this information. Take some time to absorb and like sink in before we're even ready to start picking up a pen and pencil and start sketching.
Yeah.
But eventually, we've kind of got that of information more or less saturated, and kind of we're jiving with it. So that's when we'll start to actually begin kind of exploring, and it can be messy at first. We're just exploring different ideas, concepts, um, for the upcoming style, and gradually filtering it down to something that's kind of more refined. and eventually leads to a final product that
Mhm.
you can test out. Um,
Yeah, right. So you've got like all these ideas, you kind of start to refine them. And we're going to use the Craig rat tonight as an example and maybe go through some of these steps and take a closer look. And you've shared some cool visuals with us to share with the community here. But at that point, I just to kind of go over the summary of the process, right? You have these designs, and then at that point, you kind of hand it over to development, who you referenced before, and they're sort of in charge of commercializing this. They're kind of bringing it to a physical a place.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And thanks for bringing that up. The developer is once the designer has kind of got the final the concept to a refined, honed, dialed design that everybody feels good about and is ready to take to the next stage, then I'll kind of hand the baton off to the developer and they work their magic, uh, working with the factories, ordering materials, kind of doing like figuring out some of the nuances of
Yeah.
construction and manufacture and that kind of thing, and ultimately put something in our hands that we can all look at together and do the whole process again in a
Yeah.
physical.
And what stage or what point is GORE-TEX kind of brought into this, right? I mean, I imagine the PLM has already spec'd out this needs to be a waterproof, breathable shoe. GORE-TEX will be the one we use. But where does GORE-TEX come in the process?
Yeah, so it's mentioned just as you kind of pointed out in the very beginning. When we're looking at that report, the brief of what this new style is going to be and what we want it to be. I'm gonna see that, okay, this is going to be a Gore-Tex boot, and so at that point, I'll probably have some kind of general conversations with the developer in terms of what kind of package might make the most sense to use. Um, but it's not, since it's kind of an internal booty, it's nothing that is totally going to affect the the design so much, unless it's kind of invisible fit, and then
Yeah.
that offers a little bit more freedom and that kind of thing. But yeah, we're talking about it in the very beginning, and then kind of getting a little bit more in depth as we start getting into the physical prototype stage.
Yeah, and looking at different Gore-Tex technologies too, different, I don't know, face fabric is what I'll call the next to sock fabrics and different materials that can be integrated, especially if it's going to be a PSC or other style of booty in there.
Right, right. If it's going to be kind of a leaf componentry, PFC
Yeah.
freeze, yeah.
Yeah, right. All right.
So,
Well, we'll get into that a little bit here, but before we focus on the Craig rat, I just want to you mentioned you worked at the North Face for a long time. You've taught. I imagine your shoe closet is. I'd love to see it. It's probably full of some really remarkable pieces.
too
I
many.
wonder whose is. It has. I would like to see Yoji's and yours actually. I'd be very fascinated to see these different shoe closets. But the point being here is that like in the world, how is Danner, what kind of makes Danner stand out in your mind? Now you've worked there for quite some time, right? What is the DNA there of Danner that we all can sense when we pick up a Danner boot? But what, as a designer, what are you putting into it? And yeah, what's the feeling there?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Danner's been an interesting place to work. I've really enjoyed it because it's got a unique characteristic of being this um this company has been around for almost like over 90 years now. It's got a rich history, and I can't think of too many brands off the top of my head that are still cranking out some styles that they've done in the 70s
Yeah,
and the same way today. It's the same styles, and those things are still kind of used and worn um, on a regular basis. And at the same time, I kind of think of it as it's like kind of an old dog that learns new tricks, kind of thing. So we've got these are these kind of archival styles, traditional, silhouettes and classic uppers, but we're still looking at some new technologies and what is available now that wasn't available in the 70s, and what can we do with it, and what are the folks that are wearing boots looking for now. It's not the same thing that it used to be 50 years ago. And so we're like Danner's been a really fun place to be able to kind of merge
mm-hmm.
these two different headspaces together and come up with some stuff that still feels like it belongs with a brand that's been around for 90 years, but is also has a little bit of kind of a freshness to it that keeps our products that we're doing now looking more contemporary. Um, but I think honestly one of the most uh, unique, special aspects of it for me working at Danner relative to other places that I've been really even heard of in the industry is this kind of commitment to quality.
Mhm.
The field testing that we do on all the boots that get made are unparalleled in my experience. It's like 4 months of field testing
Right.
to
Wow.
like prove out a product.
Wow.
And that's, regardless of whether it's a military piece, a mountaineering piece, or a lifestyle piece, it all gets subject to some significant rigorous field testing.
Yeah, and it shows, right? It shows in the quality. It shows in the shoes that have been out there. And for me, you can spot a Danner shoe that somebody's been wearing for a year, and it still looks great, right? And in fact, it looks better because the leather is patina, right? And that's engineered in there to have that happen, right? And just everything starts to really look cool. So,
Totally,
and
yeah.
it
Leather's
has that vibe.
beautiful for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the Craig Rat. I do want to talk about this shoe specifically because it's kind of a well, I don't know, premium boot is what I'll call it, right? Like no expense spared. This is a second version. So Ben, if you don't mind popping up the first version so we can take a look at it. This is what you were given to begin with, right? And then tell me a little bit more about the brief you got from the PLM so that you could begin to design the second version.
Yeah, yeah. So what we're looking at is kind of the OG Crag Rat. It's as you can see, it's full leather upper. It's a fairly tall boot. I think this is around an 8-inch boot. It's firm, it's stiff. It's got this kind of scratch rubber mud guard on it. Gore-Tex, made in the USA. It's a bomber piece, and it's something that it does what it's intended to do really, really well. But what we wanted to do on the next iteration was kind of take it a little bit a step further, where this boot kind of paid tribute to the Crag Rats, um, in that we were putting together um, a reliable boot. But what we wanted to do was engage with the team to create something that was specifically intended for them to use in the field as a tool, in the Cascades. And for those on the call who aren't familiar, the Crack Rats they're the first mountain rescue team that formed in the United States. They're right here in our backyard, and just they're all volunteers. What we're looking at right here is Christopher Van Tilburg is the kind of the captain of the Crag Rats. Is a doctor and a mountaineer, so kind of a rad dude. And we wanted to like sit down with these folks that are really putting, you know, they're putting themselves in harm's way to help people out there in a pinch. And we kind of wanted to, it was just a great opportunity to sit down with them and talk about what they needed in a tool for themselves, and take it out in the field
Yeah,
and
I
let them
imagine that's nice as a designer, right? Because you have access to this group of people, right? So you're not working in a vacuum. You're not working alone on this. This is your focused team.
Oh, it's awesome. Yeah, we don't have to like imagine who this user might be when we're looking at the brief. We're sitting down and talking with them and asking them questions, and really kind of getting granular on as many details as we can and keeping the conversation going.
So you had that inspiration from the old boot. You've talked with the Craig Rats. You've kind of done your Zen moment, and now what happens then, right? Where does the concept start to really come to life?
Yeah. So if we want, we can pull up that OG project a little bit, and before I even start sketching, I'll be picking out listening to what the folks are telling me that they're looking for, and some of the features. that they said they really wanted in a boot for them was a lower height. They wanted to be able to have a little bit more range of motion when they're moving. Lighter weight. They're carrying a lot of gear, and so definitely ounces and grams matter for them. Um, and one thing that was important and honestly a little kind of different for us in a way was for their purposes, they were specifically looking to get away from leather. We love leather and it's a great material, but for their purposes, they wanted something that was going to be totally waterproof, was not going to absorb water, and leather over time can have a tendency to pick up a little bit of water and not dry out quite as quickly. So the next boot needed to kind of be um, use some non-leather materials that were still really abrasion resistant, but were able to kind of dry out more quickly. Um, we still wanted it to be have a U.S. flag on it. It kind of is one of those things where we're able to kind of keep everything um, at home a little bit, where the original was made in Oregon. The Crag Rat team is based here. We wanted to be able to still, have a booth
Yeah.
that was able to have a flag on it as
Right. The
well.
flag meaning that it's made in USA. And
Right, right. Yeah, it's finished here in our factory across the street.
yeah.
And then, again, get the information, and at that point, I think I'm finally able to start getting some sketches down
Yeah.
and explore, just see what some possibilities might look like. And so there are different characteristics that we have to keep in mind because in addition to the different things that the Fragarats need, we're also trying to give it to them through the lens of Danner. And so we're kind of trying to do two things at the same time. They don't conflict with one another. It's just an additional facet to bear in mind. So, you know, in terms of the different things that can make a Danner product feel like a Danner product, really come down to, um, you know, you only put in what you need and don't put anything extra. So you'll have a lot of like simple, clean designs overall. You'll see kind of a little mudguard wave around the kind of the quarter panel, some large panels basically to eliminate seams and protect seams as much as possible. But we're also paying attention to how is the boot going to flex, and
Mhm.
where is the most wear going to kind of
Yeah.
affect the boot over time.
You have like that experience there to take that sketch. You kind of know when you're making that sketch exactly kind of how that's going to translate maybe in more of a 3D. I imagine, you see that as that sketch is 2D, but you're seeing that as three-dimensional in your head and kind of having that idea of how to put that all together. So you've got the sketches now, right? Maybe you're running some of these ideas off the Craig Rat. At what point are you kind of getting closer to maybe what we see here, right? Where we're going to get into maybe more specs and three dimensions so that you can hand that off to the developer? What kind of input are you getting from the Danner team to get it to this point?
Yeah, so we've got different checkpoints along the way. We'll call them like different stages, and I think this shot that's up now is a good representation of um, kind of maybe a tail end of the overall process where we've got some of those messy sketches done. We're starting to kind of pick out little bits and pieces that we like here and want to mix and match some different features. We'll check in with the team, pass some stuff over to the Crag Rats, get their feedback, bit by bit, refine the design into something that is a little bit more, it's just polished. It's a little bit more dialed, and we've got some of the details worked out in our minds and visualized on paper in 2D. And then at that point, when we're ready, when we've got the design that we all feeling good about and can kind of hold hands taking it to the next stage, I'll put together what's called a tech pack. And that basically is kind of a set of instructions for the factory
Mm-hmm.
to to look at the drawings that they're being given, but they'll have dimensions on them, we'll have material call outs. That's when we'll kind of spec, okay, this is the GORE-TEX package that we're going to be using.
Okay.
This is the Vibram outsole that we're going to be using, or the Vibram compound. I'll create some cross sections, the midsole, and that kind of thing. And then we hand over this package to the factory to start, doing their due diligence and ordering some materials and start creating, making the 2D turn to 3D.
Yeah, right. And you get this 3D, and at some point you do get back this boot. All those parts that you've kind of envisioned, specced out, come back as a physical piece.
Yeah, and man, I wish it looked like this in round one. It it never does.
Yeah, of course not.
At first, they're just kind of picking up different materials that can kind of serve the purpose in order to get the pattern starting to look balanced, get the understand the construction better and that type of thing. So it's several rounds of prototype iterations and refinement of the physical forms until we can eventually get to something like this we're looking at now, where we've got a finished piece that's ready to be field tested.
Right. And so now you're off into testing, right? You've kind of gone through enough iterations. You got it good enough for field testing. So who are your testers, and how do you get feedback and information such that you can feel confident about the boot?
Yeah, we've got a dedicated team that our quality team has got kind of a library of users. In the case of the Karagrat Evo, we obviously were able to get them directly involved in the field testing. And the folks, they put the shoes to the ring, right? It blows my mind, honestly, when I think about 4 months of field testing on a daily basis, with some pretty hard wear. People finish the Pacific Crest Trail in less time than that. And I don't know anyone that's been able to wear a single pair of shoes on that entire trip. But during that 4 month period, I mean, the quality team is looking for anything that might indicate a potential failure. Is it going to have a little bit of a rat hole delamination and a flex groove?
Mm-hmm.
Um, is there a stitch popping? Anything that would kind of be deemed a failure. And if they see something, they'll point it out, and we'll take that feedback. Thank you very much for it, um, and then do what we need to do to fix it.
Right. Decide what's going to be done about that. Right. And I know you've got a story around the Rand. And sort of you had gone through a bunch of testing, 4 months of testing, you get it back. What'd you see?
We did 4 months of testing. We got it back. The folks loved it, which is great to hear. But there was in the RAN material, the mudguard. It's a fantastic material. It's very similar to scratch rubber, which I imagine a lot of people on the call are kind of familiar with. But it's lighter. It's really abrasion resistant. It's made to be laminated or glued. And many of the boots that you'll see in the market that use this material, they're boots that are made for 6,000 meter summits, and they use the same material. It's
Uh-huh.
almost always glued, and that's what it was for the Karagrat Evo
Right. No
initially
reason
as
not to,
well.
right? Just do what you would spec out for this material.
Yeah, I mean that's how it's intended to be used. What we found after 4 months was that there was a little bit of delamination beginning to take place in kind of a flex groove, flex notch, and so or flex area where the kind of the boot wrinkles. And so what we ended up doing is basically doubling up. So it's still glued, but then we've also added a mechanical stitch along the perimeter of that material as well. So it's reinforced a second time.
And so
And
you make this update, and then is it back out to testing again?
back out to testing again.
Okay.
Yeah, it can be an intense process. It really, you don't want anything to go wrong, so you try and get it right the first time.
Of course.
Um,
Yeah, it's going to delay the delivery quite a bit.
yeah.
we have a really great question from Todd in the chat here, and he asked, at what point does material usage and material waste come into your design process? Right? Are you thinking about like how can we minimize waste during the design, or is that more maybe in the engineering or further down the line?
Yeah, it's a good question, Todd. And I would say honestly, it kind of depends a little bit on the design, or I should say on the brief, really. In the case of the Cragrat Evo, we were setting out to build a pinnacle product and wanted to make sure that all the materials that we were using were the best materials we can get our hands on, and that kind of takes priority. For Danner, I guess maybe um, a, a good way to think about it is the first thing that we're setting out to do is make a product that's going to do what it's set out to do and serve its purpose for as long amount of time as possible. Um, from a material standpoint, we're trying to choose. We're always picking. We have the luxury, being a bit of a premium brand, to choose high quality materials. With leather, we're doing LWG gold leather with
Leather working group, right? Is what you're talking about. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So they've got kind of best practices. Um, we use recycle materials where we can and that type of thing. Depending on the design, we might be able to panel it so we can kind of puzzle piece it and get the most yields as
Yeah.
possible. But it kind of depends on the brief in terms of what the best solution is at any given point in time.
Cool. Good question, Todd. Yeah, and I think yeah, the answer is it really depends. But I did know this that when I was at the factory touring it, the obsession to, even just using leather if when it's a leather piece, right? And leather does have blemishes and getting the I'll call them the sharks, right? The pieces, sort of the flat boots to kind of all line up and use a computer really that helps with that yield and putting that all together. It's fascinating to
Yeah, it's awesome. And in the case of leather, I mean, every hide's different, right? It's got,
yeah.
they can have tick marks or barbed wire, and yeah, so having some computer aided eyes and a human behind it to kind of mark those out
It's pretty cool.
is
I was
helpful. Yeah.
blown away by that. So getting into the tech of this, right? You've chosen select materials. You've got this great rubber band. Now you've learned to stitch it together. What other tech is in this shoe? What other components that you would love to talk about?
Sure. Yeah, and maybe we can pull up the an image.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, it's the gore, and you've referenced the aerogel as well, and I would love to get into that because it's pretty unique here. You're not seeing a lot of this in the market.
Yeah, aerogel is a cool material. And you're right, we're using it in this product as well. It's I've never gotten a chance to use it in a boot with Danner before, and so it was really, yeah, it was kind of nice to be able to. This stuff is cool. I think it's the lightest solid uh, known to man, I believe.
Yep.
It's like 99% air, so it looks unreal. It's the translucent when you're holding it. And what's special about it is that it's an incredible insulator. Being 99% air or more, air is an incredible insulator, and so aerogel is particularly special because it's able to maintain its insulative qualities while under compression. And so one of the challenges when we're doing boots in the lasting process, there's a lot of tension that gets pulled over the last, the kind of the mold of the boot with various layers of material that can compress. And so oftentimes with standard insulation, you can lose some of that R value in that compression. There's less
Mhm.
air in it. In the case of aerogel, that's not the case. And so we're able to put some strategic kind of zonal pieces of aerogel in the toe and keep the digits warm for folks that are wearing it. So
Yeah, and Gore used to use aero. We had a technology called Thermium that was used in footwear that used aerogel, and it was interesting to look at the comfort studies around that. That we found that like you could put it in the whole boot. That would make the boot very expensive, but you actually could just put it in the toe, and you got about 70% of the insulating effect, at least the comfort effect, as if you had put it in the whole boot. The key is just to have it up in the toe area. And we realized that if we just put it there, it really was the win overall. And so
Oh,
that's what you're
yeah,
doing here as well.
it's such a cool material. It's
Cool. So you got this, you got that in this. Of course, you have premium GORE-TEX product in here. Some amazing outer materials, great outsoles. And so what this just kind of ends up being a premium pinnacle piece. And how did you feel about the finished product when it finally got done? What are your impressions?
this one was a special project for me because making something that's intended specifically for a group that's basically our neighbors. We kind of see them as his partners in a lot of ways. It really brings a smile to my face to see them use it in the field, and even more so that that they're smiling when they're taking it out there and they feeling like they have kind of a great new tool in their quiver that they can rely on and take out. And at this point, I believe Christopher, the captain, got a pair of Karagarats for all the members on the team. So
Good.
got a
I
new
would hope
uniform
so.
set up.
That's awesome, and what a cool project, and neat. I mean, what a beautiful looking boot and a high performing boot. So this is neat to have this out there in the field finally. I imagine, right? That's got to feel great. um, I would love to kind of take some of this knowledge, right, this durability, the testing, this obsession with quality, and translate this into some other boots that we do see from Danner. Just in a brief exploration, can we begin with the 2650 Campo? Because I particularly love this shoe.
Mhm.
It's been on the market now a few years, so you'll have to reach back into your mind when you used to work when you
Mhm.
worked on this a long time ago.
Uh,
But this particular product is just a super comfortable shoe. It uses invisible fit technology from GORE-TEX, which I do love quite a bit. And I cannot destroy mine. I have been using them for year after year. I have taken them out in gloppy conditions to feed the horses. I've taken them out. I used a mountain biking this weekend because I needed a waterproof shoe because it was really muddy, and they just continue to be waterproof over the long haul. So tell me a little bit about like what you were setting out to achieve with the Campo, and what's a particular point of this that you are proud of?
yeah, well, I think the invisible fit is a great one because you're able to get a fit that's just as comfortable as a non-waterproof shoe. So the Campo is great to be able to incorporate the invisible fit
Yeah,
into a waterproof, the kind of trail sneaker. And it was fun to kind of work on that one as a bit of an iteration from the Trail 2650, kind of the original there, and has a little bit of kind of a sock like fit, so keeps debris out. Um, yeah, so really that was a satisfying one.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
It turned out great and it looks great. So awesome. And I know you're a designer on it. So hats off to you on that one. I'd also like to explore a pretty big shoe in the market right now, which is the Mountain 600 GORE-TEX Leaf. And can you give us a little brief on this, and maybe give us some pointers as the person who helped design this shoe, what you would like us to know about this?
Yeah. Yeah, this one's cool because it's kind of, similar to the Gragrat and the Gragrat Evo. The 600 Leaf was, it had a predecessor, and in this case, the predecessor is the Mountain Light Cascade, which it's a boot we still make, but it's decades and decades old. It's beautiful. It's classic. Um, it can be a little bit heavy for some folks, and so what we kind of set out to do with this is, I was talking about an old dog learning new tricks. We wanted to take the inspiration of this old style, this old silhouette, and then kind of reincarnate it a little bit using some modern technology. So it's a little bit lighter weight. It's still very clean and classic looking, but it's got a bit more of kind of a sneakery feel to it. There's a great SPE Vibram foam component in the midsole. It's lightweight, it's durable. We've got the Gore-Tex Leaf package in here. It's kind of where the name of the boot gets its name, from the Gore-Tex package. So
Mm-hmm.
it's got some recycled content in there, PFC free. we're using as many recycled materials as we can, along with that LWG gold leather that patinas so nicely. And
Hmm.
then what's kind of an added bonus to this one, it's something that makes us really proud over at Danner about this boot specifically, is it's kind of the first boot that we have is kind of an overseas product. You know, this boot's made across the pond, and when the leather has developed a nice patina, but the rubber lugs have kind of worn thin, we're able to take these boots, remove the bottom unit, and then apply a new one um, to the existing upper. So, you know, the owner of these boots can get that many more miles out of a pair of boots that they've already got a lot of stories with and has taken them to a lot of places. So they're getting more life out of something. And we like to think of it as basically being better than new because
Yeah.
it's, you know, it's theirs. It's got their stories to it.
No,
And
the recraftability is a important aspect of that, and I do want to make sure folks point this out to customers when you are referencing this boot, right? That it can be recrafted at the recrafting center in Portland, and your crafting center is great. You have quick turnaround. It's a pretty cool sustainability initiative, and that we can extend that useful life, right? You've already gotten your 3 years use out of these. Well, we can double that now with 6 more years, and then maybe beyond, right? And keep going so that we don't have to make new shoes. And that is such an important part of that. So it's an exciting project, and these shoes, you know, they're out there in volume. So it'll be interesting to see when customers start to send them back and get them resold. It'll be really
totally,
cool.
yeah. Yeah.
Um,
It puts
no,
a, I'll say like it puts a little bit of onus on the upper as well, because we want that to last an additional round of usage too. So, you know, it makes it that much more important to kind of make sure we're using the premium materials, the Gore-Tex booty, the Gore-Tex lining, the leather, you know, all of it, so it can really stand up twice as long.
yeah. Yeah, and to be clear, you know, recrafting is not new to Danner. It's just new to these overseas made boots, right? And that was the big innovation with that, with the mountain, with the leaf there, about 600 leaf. Um,
Right, right.
and
And you know, just maybe one kind of additional add-on, anything that has the Danner name on it is all subject to the same degree of field testing, whether that's made at our factory across the street or a factory overseas. Um, they all go through the same rigor for completion, finalization.
amazing quality, right? And thank you for sharing all that with us, Gabe. Um, I am gonna sort of ask a final question here because I always like to, I'm just super curious if there's anything else on your mind today. Now that you've been to 2026 and back because you were working on future shoes, is there anything just kind of on your mind about Danner that you want to share with us? Any kind of parting words you have?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main takeaways that I hope people are able to kind of get out of this conversation that we're having here is, I guess maybe the first one is that Tanner really we're being like putting out a quality product is really important to us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we put a lot of time into making sure that we can get a product right so that whoever ends up wearing it can feel confident in it, and you know they can tell when they're holding it, when they're wearing it, that it's something that is made right, made well.
Yeah.
And then the second part of that really is this recraftable aspect to it. You know, along with making a really good high quality pair of boots, we want those to be usable for absolutely as long as we can. So seeing the leaf is kind of it's the first step on an expanding process of adding more product that's made overseas into the recrafting you know, kind of queue. So we're able to kind of expand the offerings and just keep these boots on people's feet where they belong. Um,
Love it. Yeah, thanks for that. And just yeah, quality and durability and longevity are you know, I think we go partner with Gore hand in hand on that. And it's neat to hear it from you. So thanks for sharing all that with us tonight. It's always a pleasure to talk with folks from Danner, and it was just super special to be able to pick your brain, Gabe, and learn more about the design process. Definitely learned the steps along the way, and just to see how something like that comes to be. And it's remarkable that there's just so many shoes out there coming out of Danner that are just super high quality. So keep up the good work.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks for the conversation, Marshall. Really enjoyed it.